The knock came at midnight. 3 sharp raps that echoed through Daniel's small apartment like gunshots. He froze, a spoonful of cold leftover pasta halfway to his mouth, his daughter's math homework spread across the kitchen table. Who could possibly be at his door at this hour? The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Daniel set down his fork, checked that Emma was still asleep in her room, and moved cautiously to the door. When he peered through the peephole, his stomach dropped. Victoria Chen, his boss of 3 years, stood in the hallway, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes rimmed red. He opened the door, and before he could speak, she uttered the words that would change everything. "Daniel, you're fired." If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support means everything, and I promise this journey is just getting started. Daniel Parker had always prided himself on being a good father. After his wife Lisa's death from cancer 2 years ago, he'd restructured his entire life around 8-year-old Emma. Their morning routine was a carefully choreographed dance, breakfast together at 6:30, school drop-off by 7:45, and Daniel at his desk at Chen Architectural Design by 8:15 sharp. Evenings were sacred, dinner together no matter what, homework help, and bedtime stories. The weekends were for adventures, even if those adventures were just trips to the local park or baking cookies in their tiny kitchen. What Daniel hadn't realized was how much his dedication to Emma had begun to affect his work. The promotion he'd been promised before Lisa's diagnosis had gone to someone else. Projects he once would have stayed late to perfect were now submitted with minimal effort. And his boss, Victoria Chen, had been noticing. Victoria had built her architectural firm from nothing, working twice as hard as her male counterparts to earn half the respect. At 42, she had the reputation, the client list, and the awards to prove her success. What she didn't have was patience for employees who couldn't keep up. Daniel Parker had once been her most promising designer, with an eye for sustainable materials and innovative spaces that complemented her own vision. But for months now, he'd been slipping. Missed deadlines. Uninspired designs. Early departures from important client meetings. She'd tried to talk to him about it. Subtle hints at first, asking if everything was all right, offering flexible hours. Then more direct conversations about expectations and performance. But Daniel, consumed by grief and the overwhelming responsibility of single parenthood, had either missed or ignored every signal. The day before she appeared at his door, Victoria had lost the Westridge account, a multi-million-dollar project that would have put her firm on the national map. The client had specifically mentioned Daniel's lackluster presentation as the reason they were going with a competitor. It was the final straw. "Can I come in?" Victoria asked, still standing in the hallway after delivering her bombshell. Daniel stepped aside wordlessly, his mind racing. Being fired meant no health insurance for Emma. No rent money. No way to pay for the therapy sessions that were finally helping his daughter process her mother's death. Victoria entered the apartment, taking in the modest furnishings, the wall covered with Emma's artwork, the single plate at the kitchen table next to a pile of elementary school math worksheets. Something in her expression softened. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted. "I've been driving around for hours trying to make sense of today." The Westridge account was everything, Daniel. Everything. "I know," he said quietly. "And I know I messed up the presentation. But Victoria, I need this job. Emma needs." "I saw you leave early yesterday," she interrupted. "The clients were still in the building, and you just left. No explanation. No apology. Just gone when we needed you most." Daniel closed his eyes, remembering the school nurse's call about Emma's fever. He'd rushed out without thinking, without telling anyone. It hadn't even occurred to him that the clients might still be there. "Emma was sick," he said simply. "The school called. She had a fever of 102. Victoria's expression didn't change. "You could have told someone." You could have called me afterward. You could have done 1,000 things differently, Daniel, not just yesterday but for months now. A small voice came from the hallway. Daddy? Who's talking? They both turned to see Emma standing there in her unicorn pajamas, her dark hair tangled from sleep, her eyes wide and curious. Hey, sweetheart, Daniel said, crossing to her and kneeling down. This is Ms. Chen from Daddy's work. She just needed to talk to me about something. You should be in bed. Emma looked past him to Victoria. Are you Daddy's boss? The one who makes buildings that don't hurt the earth? Victoria seemed startled by the direct question. Yes, I am. My daddy says you're the smartest architect in the whole city, Emma continued. He shows me your buildings sometimes and tells me how you think of everything, even the birds that need places to nest. Daniel felt his face flush. He hadn't realized Emma had been listening to his admiring comments about Victoria's work. Victoria's professional mask slipped for a moment. He said that? Emma nodded solemnly. When I grow up, I want to make buildings like you. Daddy's teaching me how to draw them already. Daniel gently turned Emma back toward her bedroom. Let's get you back to bed, Em. You need your rest. But I want to show Ms. Chen my drawings, Emma protested. Another time, maybe, Daniel said, though he knew there wouldn't be another time now that he was fired. After tucking Emma back in, Daniel returned to find Victoria standing by his drafting table in the corner of the living room. She was looking at the sketches scattered across it, his personal project, the one he worked on late at night when he couldn't sleep. What is this? She asked, picking up one of the drawings. Daniel hesitated. It's nothing. Just something I've been playing with. This isn't nothing, Daniel. This is. She spread the drawings out, piecing together his vision. This is revolutionary. A community living space with integrated childcare, co-working areas, shared gardens. Is this what I think it is? He nodded slowly. Housing designed specifically for single parents. Affordable, practical, with built-in support systems. Victoria looked at him with new eyes. How long have you been working on this? Since Lisa died, he admitted. At first it was just therapy, something to do when the grief kept me awake. But then I started thinking about how different our lives might be if spaces were designed with people like me in mind. For the first time that night, Victoria sat down. Tell me more. And so, at 1 a.m, Daniel found himself explaining his vision to the woman who had just fired him. He showed her the research he'd done on the unique challenges single parents faced, the innovative solutions he'd designed, the sustainable materials he'd selected. As he spoke, his passion, the same passion that had once made him her star employee, returned. Victoria listened without interruption, her sharp mind already seeing the potential. When he finally fell silent, she looked at him with a mixture of frustration and admiration. Why haven't you brought this to me before? She demanded. This could be groundbreaking work, Daniel. This could change lives. He gave a hollow laugh. When would I have done that? Between dropping Emma at school and picking her up? Between making dinner and helping with homework? Between trying to keep my job and being a good father? The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Victoria stood abruptly. I need to go. I've made a decision I need to reconsider. Victoria, please, Daniel began, but she held up a hand. Be at the office tomorrow at 9. Not earlier, Emma needs her breakfast. We'll talk then. And with that, she was gone, leaving Daniel standing in his apartment, confused and hopeful and terrified all at once. The next morning, after dropping Emma at school, Daniel arrived at Chen Architectural Design at exactly 9 o'clock. The receptionist looked surprised to see him but directed him to Victoria's office without comment. Victoria was waiting, impeccably dressed as always, no sign of the emotional woman who had appeared at his door the night before. On her desk were his drawings, neatly organized. "Sit down, Daniel," she said, her voice professional. "We need to talk about your future with this firm." He sat, bracing himself. "I'm not going to rehire you as a junior architect," she said bluntly. Daniel's heart sank. "Instead," Victoria continued, "I'm offering you a new position. Project lead for community-centered design. You'll head a new division focused on developing your single-parent housing concept, with the potential for other community-based projects in the future." Daniel stared at her, speechless. "The position comes with a significant raise, which I hope will help with your financial situation. More importantly, it comes with flexible hours. You'll be expected to produce results, but I don't care when or where you do the work, as long as it gets done." "I don't understand," Daniel finally managed. "Last night you fired me." Victoria's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Last night I was angry and disappointed. I'd lost a major account, and I needed someone to blame. But seeing your home, meeting Emma, understanding what you've been dealing with, it gave me perspective." She gestured to his drawings. "And this work, Daniel, this is exceptional. It's the kind of innovative thinking that made me hire you in the first place. I'd be a fool to let you go when you're capable of this. But the Westridge account is gone," she finished for him. "And that's partly on you. But it's also on me for not recognizing what was happening and finding a better solution. I pride myself on designing spaces that work for people's real lives, but I've been running a company that doesn't work for a single father's real life. That's hypocrisy." Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So you're not firing me?" "No. I'm promoting you. But," she added, her voice turning stern, "this is conditional on complete honesty from now on. If Emma is sick, tell me. If you need to leave early, tell me. If you're struggling with a deadline, tell me. No more missed signals, Daniel. We need to communicate." "I can do that," he said, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "I promise." Victoria nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now, I've scheduled a meeting for us with the Harrington Foundation next week. They fund innovative housing solutions, and I think your concept will interest them." As Daniel left Victoria's office that day, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Not just for his career, but for a future where he could be both the father Emma needed and the architect he'd always wanted to be. Over the next 6 months, Daniel's single-parent housing concept evolved from sketches on his drafting table to a funded pilot project. The Harrington Foundation had been enthusiastic, offering not just financial backing but connections to community organizations that could help identify families for the first development. Victoria proved to be as good as her word about the flexible schedule. Daniel established a new routine that allowed him to be present for Emma while still excelling at work. He set up a small office area in their apartment where he could work after Emma went to bed. Victoria installed video conferencing equipment so he could participate in meetings remotely when necessary. And on the days when Emma was sick or had school events, no one questioned his absence from the office. The most surprising development, however, was the change in his relationship with Victoria. What had begun as a strictly professional connection evolved into something more complex. Victoria began to stop by their apartment occasionally, ostensibly to review designs but increasingly just to spend time with them. Emma adored her, proudly showing off her own architectural drawings and soaking up Victoria's knowledge like a sponge. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Victoria lingered at Daniel's apartment, helping him refine some details for the community garden space in their project. "You know," she said, setting down her pencil, "I never thought I'd say this, but firing you was the best mistake I ever made." Daniel laughed. "From my perspective, getting fired was terrifying. But I guess it forced us both to see things differently." Victoria nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I've been running my firm like I have something to prove for so long that I forgot why I became an architect in the first place. It wasn't to win awards or land big accounts. It was to create spaces that make people's lives better." That's what drew me to your firm, Daniel admitted. Your reputation for caring about the human element of design. I lost sight of that, Victoria said quietly. Until I saw your apartment that night, saw how you were living, met Emma, it reminded me that buildings aren't just structures. They're homes. They're the backdrop for people's lives. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just his boss but a woman who was passionate and driven and, in her own way, as lonely as he had been. Emma asked me something interesting yesterday, he said. She wanted to know if you were my girlfriend. Victoria's eyes widened. What did you tell her? I told her that you were my boss and my friend. And that relationships between adults are complicated. Very diplomatic, Victoria said with a small smile. She then informed me that she wouldn't mind if you were my girlfriend, because you make me smile more than I used to. Victoria's smile faded, replaced by something more vulnerable. Do I? Daniel nodded. You do. And not just because you saved my job or believed in my project. You challenge me. You push me to be better. And somehow, you've managed to do that while also making space for me to be a father first. Daniel, Victoria began, but he held up a hand. I'm not suggesting anything. I know the professional complications. I know we're different people with different lives. I'm just acknowledging something that's been happening. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I've never been interested in having children of my own, she finally said. My career has always been my priority. Daniel nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. I understand. But, she continued, I find that I care very much about Emma's future. And yours. More than is strictly professional. Their eyes met, and Daniel felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced since before Lisa got sick, possibility. Maybe, Victoria said carefully, we should explore what that means. Slowly. With clear boundaries between work and, whatever this might be. Daniel smiled. I'd like that. 1 year to the day after Victoria had knocked on Daniel's door to fire him, they stood together at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first Parkerton Community Living Development. The modern, sustainable complex featured 20 apartments designed specifically for single-parent families, with shared childcare facilities, community gardens, co-working spaces, and a support center offering everything from financial counseling to grief therapy. Emma, now 9, proudly held the oversized scissors alongside the mayor, beaming as cameras flashed. The first families would be moving in the following week, chosen through an application process that prioritized need and community involvement. As Daniel watched his daughter and the woman who had become so important to both of them, he reflected on how much had changed in a year. His professional life had transformed from a source of stress to a source of fulfillment. The constant guilt he'd felt about not being enough, not a good enough father, not a good enough architect, had diminished. And the grief that had once consumed him had softened into something he could carry without being crushed by it. That evening, after the celebrations were over, Daniel, Emma, and Victoria sat in the model apartment of the new development, sharing pizza and talking about the day. I can't believe we did it, Daniel said, looking around at the space he had designed with such care. A year ago, this was just drawings on my table. A year ago, I fired you, Victoria reminded him with a wry smile. Not my finest moment. I think it worked out okay, he replied, reaching for her hand. Emma, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Are we going to live here? In one of the apartments? Daniel exchanged a glance with Victoria. They hadn't discussed this with Emma yet. Actually, sweetheart, he said gently, these apartments are for other families who need them more than we do. Families who don't have as much support as we have. Emma considered this. Because we have Victoria now? Victoria's hand tightened around Daniel's. That's part of it, she agreed. But also because your dad's job is more stable now, and because we want to help other families who are going through hard times. Like when Mom died, Emma said matter-of-factly. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. Like that, yes. Emma was quiet for another moment, then asked, if we're not going to live here, where are we going to live? Are we staying in our apartment forever? Daniel and Victoria exchanged another look, this one filled with nervous anticipation. Well, Victoria said carefully, your dad and I have been talking about that. We thought maybe, if you were okay with it, we might look for a new place. A house, maybe. With a yard. For all three of us. Emma's eyes widened.